Hello again. As you can see, today we are going to be looking at a flip cam imitator. The reason I chose this particular camera was because it is waterproof, and that's what made it stand out above all the others at the time. I ordered this camera I believe sometime last year, so I've had some time to play with it. As you can see, the package itself arrived in very good condition. I can only speak on behalf of Amazon, not any other retailer. It comes with software that you can use to connect to all these social services, but as always I would never recommend you use it. It's just junk software, it's completely unnecessary, and most cameras record in standard format anyway. The camera itself is very light, which explains why the package itself arrived undamaged. Probably. Well, let's get right to the unboxing. The camera itself was relatively inexpensive, so I was pleasantly surprised to see the care taken with the packaging. There were 3 colors available: blue, black, and red. I chose red because it would be easier to find if you dropped it. As with almost all other tech manufacturers, Kodak is taking a cue from Apple in their packaging and their product design itself. As you can see here, the little power brick looks familiar, doesn't it? The packaging also includes a USB cable, which you use for exporting the video if you don't have an SD reader, and a wrist strap, which was a pain in the ass to install. In this shot, you can get a good idea of the size difference between an iPhone 4 and the camera. The viewing angle doesn't really compare to something that you'll see like on a mobile phone, for example, but it doesn't really matter since you'll be looking at it head on most of the time anyway, and it looks perfectly fine that way. On the online pictures, the color actually looked fire engine red, and I was disappointed to see that the color was nowhere near that. Even the packaging shows it kind of pink. It looks more like the lifeguard orange you'll see them using. In my experience, importing videos and pictures is very simple. You just plug it right in on both Windows and Mac, and both operating systems will detect it and allow you to drag and drop. Here's a little bit closer look at some of the detailed packaging that I commented on earlier. Even the additional packaging removed, it still had little places that were covered up, and I thought that was very nice of them. It wasn't necessary, but it keeps your product and your shiny parts clean, and I can really appreciate that. Now, while the face-on appearance does make it look very similar to an iPhone, when you look at it from this angle here, you'll see there is a substantial difference. That's not a bad thing, however, is when you're holding it, it feels much better when you're recording video. So you may be asking yourself, why get one of these cameras when I have a perfectly good mobile phone that records much better quality video? Well, for one thing, you don't have to worry about dropping it. These little guys are sturdy, well-built, waterproof, and they have expandable memory. The camera has built-in memory which you can use to record lower resolution video, but if you want to record HD, I thoroughly recommend you get a large SD, 32 8 gigs or 16. There is a tiny little reset button right in between the USB and HDMI, which I've only had to use once when resetting the firmware. The control buttons are very responsive and have an audible click that I like in my electronics. If you have a tripod or a GorillaPod, they went so far as to include a full-size connector, which is great. The gloss design along the trim it's a nice touch, and it's not too excessive. I'm okay with it. The power button's right at the top like on most of these cameras, and the lens is very tiny but surprisingly high quality. Initial setup is very easy, and a variety of resolution options are readily accessible. So all that's left is to take it outside and give it a dry run, so to speak.
I felt it happening, and I was like, oh, maybe it's just my imagination. I kept looking and it looked fine.
The pictures you can get with this camera can be nice if you can get some decent light. This camera will never replace a good point and shoot, but the strength of the camera is not the camera itself, but the risks you're willing to take with this camera because it's so durable. Underwater video is decent quality, though the audio ends up a little bit muffled because it goes into the little speaker holes. It doesn't damage the camera. After some time that goes away, but here are some pictures that I was able to take that I would have never taken with anything but this camera.
Try not to get too, well,